Chapter 7 The Cricket Cage. That same night, after the Belenis had gone home, Chester was telling Harry and Tucker about his trip to Chinatown. The cat and mouse were sitting on the shelf outside, and Chester Cricket was crouched under the bell in the cage. Every minute or so, Tucker would get up and walk around to the other side of the Pagua. He was overcome with admiration for it. And Mr. Fong gave Mario a fortune cookie too, Chester was saying. I'm very fond of Chinese food myself, said Harry. I often browse through the garbage cans down in Chinatown. Tucker Mouse stopped gaping at the cricket cage long enough to say, Once I thought of living down there, but those Chinese made funny dishes. They make soup out of bird's nest and stew out of shark fins. They can make souffle of a mouse. I decided to stay away. A low rumble of chuckle came from Harry Cat's throat. Listen to the mouse, he said, and gave Tucker a pat on the back, and then sent him rolling over and over. Easy, Harry, easy, said Tucker, picking himself up. You don't know your own strength. He stood up on his hind legs and looked in through the red-painted bars of the cage. What a palace, he murmured. Beautiful. You could feel like a king living in a place like this. Yes, said Chester, but I'm not so keen on staying in a cage. I'm more used to tree stumps and holes in the ground. It makes me sort of nervous to be locked in here. Do you want to come out? Asked Harry. He sprung each of his nails out of the pad in his right forepaw and lifted the latch of the gate to the cage. Chester pushed the gate and it swung open. He jumped out. It's a relief to be free, he said, jumping around the shelf. There's nothing like freedom. Say, Chester, said Tucker, can I go in for a minute? I've never seen a Pagua before. Go right ahead, said Chester. Tucker scrambled through the gate into the cage and pranced all around inside it. He lay down, first on one side, and then on the other, and then on his back. If only I had a silk robe right now. If only I had a silk robe now, he said, standing up on his hind legs again and resting one paw on a bar. I feel like the Emperor of China. How do I look, Harry? You look like a mouse in a trap, said Harry Cat. Every mouse should end up in a trap so nice, said Tucker. Do you want to sleep in the cage? Asked Chester. Oh, could I? Exclaimed the mouse. His idea of luxury was to spend a night in such surroundings. Sure, said Chester. I prefer the matchbox anyway. There's only one thing, said Tucker, stamping with his left hind leg. The floor. It's a little hard to sleep on. I'll go over and get a bunch of paper from the drainpipe. No, I'll make a mess, said Tucker. We don't want to get Chester in trouble with the Belenis. He hesitated. Maybe you could fix something here. How about a piece of Kleenex? Suggested Chester. That's nice and soft. Kleenex would be good, but I was wondering. He paused again. Come on, Tucker, said Harry Cat. You've got something on your mind. Let's have it. Well, I sort of thought if there were any dollar bills in the cash register. Harry burst out laughing. You might know, he said to Chester. Who but this mouse would want to sleep on dollar bills? Chester jumped into the cash register, which was open as usual. There's a few dollars in here, he called up. Plenty to make a mattress, said Tucker Mouse. Pass some in, please. Chester passed the first dollar bill up to Harry Cat, who took it over to the cage and pushed it through the gate. Tucker took hold of one end of the bill and shook it out like a blanket. It was old and rumbly. Careful you don't rip it, said Harry. I wouldn't rip it. This is one mouse that knows the value of a dollar. Harry brought over the second dollar. It was newer and stiffer than the first. Let me see. He lifted a corner of each dollar bill, one in either paw. This can go on the bottom. I like a crispy, clean sheet, and I pulled the old one for a cover. Now the pillow is what I need. Please look in the cash register again. Harry and Chester switched the compartments of the open drawer. There's a little loose change, but not much else. How about a 50-cent piece, said Harry. Too flat, answered Tucker Mouse. The rear half of the drawer was still inside the cash register. Chester called back. It was dark, and he couldn't see where he was going. He felt around until his head bumped into something. Whatever it was, it seemed to be big and round. Chester pushed and shoved, and finally got it back out into the dim light of the newsstand. It was one of Mama Bellini's earrings, shaped like a seashell, with sparkling little stones all over it. What did an earring do? He shouted to Tucker. Well, I don't know, Tucker said. It looks like as if it looks like as if it's covered with diamonds, said Harry Cat. Perfect, called Tucker. Send it along. Harry lifted the earring into the cage. Tucker examined it carefully, like a jeweler. I think these are fake diamonds, he said at last. Yes, but still very pretty, said Chester, who had jumped up beside them. I guess it'll do, said Tucker. He laid his head down on the side of the new dollar bill, resting his head on the earring, and pulled the old dollar up over him. Chester and Harry heard him draw a deep breath of contentment. I'm sleeping on money inside a palace, he said. It's a dream come true. Harry Cat purred his chuckle. Good night, Chester, he said. I'm going back to the drain pipe, where I can stretch out. He jumped to the floor. Good night, Harry, Chester called. Soft and silent as a shadow, Harry slipped out the opening in the side of the newsstand and glided over to the drain pipe. Chester hopped into his matchbox. He had gotten to like the feeling of Kleenex. It was almost like the spongy wood of his old tree stump, and felt much more like home than the cricket cage. Now they each had their own place to sleep. Good night, Tucker, Chester said. Night, Chester, Tucker answered. Chester Cricket burrowed deeper onto the Kleenex. He was beginning to enjoy his life in New York. Just before he was asleep, he heard Tucker Mouse sighing happily in the cage. 8. Tucker Life Savings. Chester Cricket was having a dream. In his dream, he was sitting on top of his stump back in Connecticut, eating a leaf from a willow tree. He would bite off a piece of leaf, chew it up, and swallow it. But for some reason, it didn't taste as good as usual. There was something dry and papery about it, and it had a bitter flavor. Still, Chester kept eating, hoping that it would taste better. A storm came up in his dream. The wind blew clouds of dust across the meadow. They swirled around his stump. Chester began to sneeze because the dust got in his nose, but he still held on to the leaf. Then he sneezed such a big sneeze that it woke him up. Chester looked around him. He had been walking in his sleep, and he had been sitting at the edge of the cash register. The storm had been a gust of air that blew the newsstand when the shuttle pulled up to the station. He was still choking from the dirt that flew around him. Chester looked at his two front legs, half expecting to find a willow leaf, but there was no leaf he was holding. It was a $2 bill, and he had already eaten half of it. He dropped the bill and leaped over to the cricket cage, where Tucker Mouse was sleeping peacefully. Chester shook the silver bell furiously. It rang like a fire alarm. Tucker jumped out from his blanket of dollar bills and ran around the cage shouting, "Help! Fire! Murder! Police!" Then he realized where he was and sat down panting. "What is the matter with you, Chester?" he said. "I could have died from fright. I just ate half of a $2 bill," said Chester. Tucker stared at him with disbelief. "You did what?" he asked. "Yes, look." He fetched the ruined $2 bill from the cash register. "I dreamed there was a leaf, and I ate it." Oh, moaned Tucker Mouse. "Not a $1 bill, not even a $1 bill and 50 cents. $2 you had to eat. And from the Bellenies, too. People who hardly make $2 in 2 days." "What am I going to do?" asked Chester. "Pack your bags and go to California," said Tucker. Chester shook his head. "I can't. They've been so good to me. I can't run away." Tucker Mouse shrugged his shoulders, then stay and take the rap, he said. He crept out of the cage and examined the remains of the money. "There's still half of it left. Maybe we could put scotch tape along the edge and pass it off as a $1 bill." "No one would believe it," said Chester. He sat down, said formally, holding the bill. "Oh dear," and things were going along so nicely. Tucker Mouse put his bedclothes back in the cash register drawer and came to sit behind Chester. "Buck up," he said. "We could still figure out something, maybe." They both concentrated for a minute. Then Tucker clapped his paws and squeaked, "I got it. Eat the rest of it, and they'll never know what happened." "They'll accuse each other of losing it," said Chester. I don't want to make any bad feeling between them." You're so honorable," said Tucker. "It's disgusting." "Besides, it tastes badass," added Chester. "Then how about this?" Tucker had a new idea. "We frame the janitor who cleans up the station. I'll take the evidence over and plant it in his water closet. He whooped me from mock last week. I would be glad to see him go to jail for a few days. No, no, said Chester. We can't get somebody else in trouble. Then a stranger, said Tucker. We tip over the Kleenex and break the glass and the alarm clock and throw all the small change on the floor. They'll think a thief came in the night. You can even put a bandage on and make it out like a hero. I could see all. No, Chester interrupted him. The damage we'd done would cost more than $2. Tucker had one more idea. He was going to volunteer to go over and swipe $2 from the lunch counter. But before he could suggest that, the top of the stand was suddenly lifted off. They had forgotten what time it was. Mama Bellini, who was on duty in the morning, stood towering, frowning down on them. Tucker let out a shriek of fear and jumped to the floor. Catch the mouse, shouted Mama. She picked up a Fortune magazine, very big and heavy, and heaved it after Tucker. It hit him on the left hind leg as he vanished into the drain pipe. Chester Cricket sat frozen to the spot. He was caught red-handed, holding the chewed-up $2 in his front legs. Muttering with rage, Mama Bellini picked up Bison Tenny, tossed him into the cricket cage, and locked the gate behind him. When she had put the newsstand in order, she pulled out her knitting and began to work furiously. But she was so angry she kept dropping stitches. And that made her angrier still. Chester crouched in a far corner of the cage. Things had been going well for Mama and him, but that was all ruined now. He half expected that she would pick him up, cage and all, and throw him onto the shuttle tracks. At 8:30, Mario and Papa arrived. Mario wanted to go to Coney Island for a swim today, but before he could even say good morning, Mama Bellini stretched out her hand and pointed sternly at Chester. There he was, with the evidence beside him. A three-cornered conversation began. Mama denounced Chester as a money-eater and said further that she suspected him of inviting mice and other unsavory characters into the newsstand at night. Papa said that he didn't think Chester had eaten the $2 on purpose, and what difference did it make if a mouse or two came in? Mama said he had to go. Papa said he could stay, but he'd have to be kept in the cage. And Mario knew that Chester, like all people who are used to freedom, would rather die than live his life behind bars. Finally, it was decided that the cricket was Mario's pet. The boy would have to replace the money, and then, when he had, Chester could come out again. Until then, the cage. By working part-time delivery groceries, when he wasn't taking care of the newsstand, Mario thought he could earn enough in a couple of weeks to get Chester out of jail. Of course, that would mean no swimming at Coney Island, and no movies, and no nothing. But it was worth it. He fed the cricket his breakfast, leftover asparagus tips, and a piece of cabbage leaf. Chester had practically no appetite after what had happened. Then, when the cricket was finished, Mario said goodbye and told him not to worry, and went off to the grocery store to see about his job. That night, Mario had shut up the newsstand. Chester was hanging through the glided bars of his cage. Earlier in the evening, Mario had come back to feed him his supper, but then he had to leave right away to get in a few more hours of work. Most of the day, Chester had spent inventing hopping games to try to keep himself entertained, but they didn't really work. Really. He was bored and lonely. The funny thing was that although he had been happy and sleepy and kept wishing it were night, now that it was, he couldn't fall asleep. Chester heard the soft padding of feet behind him. Harry Cat sprung up and landed on the shelf. In a moment, Tucker Mouse followed him from the stool, groaning with pain. He was still limping in his left hind leg, where the Fortune magazine had hit him. How long is the sentence? Asked Harry. Until Mario can pay back the money, sighed Chester. Couldn't you get out on bail for the time being? Asked Tucker. No, said Chester. And anyway, nobody has any bail. I'm surprised they let me off that easy. Harry Cat folded his front paws over each other, and he rested his head on them. Let me get this straight, he said. Does Mario have to work for the money as a punishment, or does he just have to get it somewhere? He just has to get it, said Chester. Why should he be punished? I'm the one who ate the money. Harry looked at Tucker, a long look, as if he expected the mouse to say something. Tucker began to fidget. Say, Chester, you want to escape? We can open the cage. You can come out and live in the drain pipe. No, Chester shook his head. It wouldn't be fair to Mario. I'll just have to serve out the time. Harry looked at Tucker again and began tapping one of his paws. Well, he said finally. Tucker moaned and massaged his sore spot. Oh, my poor leg. That Mama Baloney can sure heave a magazine. For the bump, Harry, he offered. I felt it already, said Harry. Now enough of stalling. You have money. Tucker has money, said Chester Cricket. Tucker looked nervously from one to the other. I have my life savings, he said in a pathetic voice. He's the richest mouse in New York, said Harry. Old Moneybags Mouse, he's known as. How did you get the money? Asked Chester. Tucker Mouse cleared his throat and began wriggling his two front feet. When he spoke, his voice was choked up with emotion. Years ago, when yet a little mouse, I was tender in age and lacking in experience. I moved from the sweet scenes in my childhood, 10th Avenue, that is into Times Square. And it was here I learned the values of economics, which meant saving. And many the values of economics, which means saving. Many had an old mouse, did I see, crawling away unwanted to be a poor mouse grave. But he had not saved, and I resolved that such a fate would never come to me. All of which means that you've got a pile of loot back there in the drain pipe, said Harry Cat. Just a minute, please, if you wouldn't mind, said Tucker. I'll tell it in my own way. His voice became high and pitiful again. So for all the long years of my youth, I could have been gambling, which means playing with the other mouses. I saved paper, I saved food, I saved clothing. Save time and get to the point, said Harry. Tucker gave Harry a sour smile. And I also saved money, he went on. In the course of many years of scrounging, it was only natural I should only find a certain amount of loose change. Often, oh often, my friends. Tucker put his head over his heart. I would sit in the opening of the drain pipe, watching the human beings and waiting. And whenever one of them dropped a coin, however small, pennies I love, I would dash out at great peril to life and limb and bring it back to my house. Ah, when I think of the trampling shoes and the dangerous galoshes, many times I had my toes stepped on and my whiskers torn, but because of these labors, but it was worth it. Oh, it was worth it. My friends, on account now, I have $2 5 quarters, 2 dimes, 6 nickels, and 18 pennies tucked away in the drain pipe.